Bigfoot is real, and I know for sure the species doesn't live only here in the States, but also in Vietnam. Why? Because back in my deployment, my buddies and I walked alongside it in what was one of the most terrifying yet insane experiences I have ever lived. I'm in my 70s now. Live in a small house with a yard I can't quite keep up with anymore. Got a dog that's almost as old as I feel some days. Most nights I sleep just fine, but not tonight. Tonight I'm sitting here at my kitchen table at 3 in the morning, holding my old dog tags, and I can't stop thinking about what happened 56 years ago this week. For over half a century, I didn't talk about it. Didn't tell my wife before she passed. Didn't tell my kids. Didn't tell the VA counselor who asked me about my nightmares back in the 70s. But I'm old now, and I figure if I don't get this out before I die, the truth dies with me. And whatever that thing was out there in those jungles, it deserves better than that. What I'm about to tell you changed everything I thought I knew about the world, changed what I thought was possible. We went into that jungle as a squad of 12 men in the spring of 1968. Only 7 of us came back. But here's the thing nobody knows, the thing that's been eating at me all these decades. Not all those deaths were from the enemy. And the only reason any of us made it out alive was because of something that shouldn't exist. Something that watched us, terrified us, but also kept us breathing when we should have died in that green hell. They sent us out on a 2-week reconnaissance patrol deep into triple canopy jungle near the Laotian border. The kind of mission where you pack light, move quiet, and pray you don't run into anything bigger than your squad. The area was hot, lots of enemy activity, and there were stories about patrols that went in and just never came back. Command wanted eyes on some suspected supply routes, wanted to know what was moving through that part of the jungle. So they picked us. Lucky us. Those first few days were what you'd expect. Heat that pressed down on you like a wet blanket. Humidity so thick you could barely breathe. Every step through that jungle felt like walking through an oven, and your uniform never dried, just stayed soaked with sweat and rain and whatever else. We moved careful, stayed alert, checked our sectors, the usual drill. But even in those early days, we started noticing things that weren't quite right. There were branches broken off trees, but they were way too high up. 10, 12 feet up, just snapped off clean. We'd find footprints near streams when we stopped to fill canteens. Big prints, bigger than any boot, pressed deep into the mud. At first we figured maybe enemy soldiers, maybe they had some big guys, but the prints were wrong. Too wide. Toes instead of boot treads. We didn't talk about it much, but you could see the guys looking at those prints and then looking at each other with questions nobody wanted to ask. The jungle sounds changed at night too. You get used to the noise in the jungle, the insects and birds and animals moving around. But there were spots, certain areas we'd pass through where everything would just go silent. Complete silence, like someone hit a mute button on the whole forest. That's not natural. Animals go quiet when there's a predator around, when there's something they're afraid of. We'd sit in that silence and listen to our own hearts beating too fast, wondering what the hell could scare a whole jungle into shutting up. The local soldiers with us, the ARVN guys, they were acting strange too. Kept looking up into the trees, wouldn't settle down at night. We asked them what was wrong, but they'd just shake their heads and refuse to explain. One of them kept muttering something in Vietnamese. And when we finally got him to translate, all he'd say was that the forest had eyes. That didn't make us feel any better. Then one morning, the 4th day I think, we woke up and found our perimeter markers had been moved. Not destroyed, not stolen, just rearranged. Someone or something had come right into our camp while we slept and moved our gear around. Some supplies were in different places than where we had left them, but nothing was taken. It was like something was curious about us, examining our stuff. We tightened up our watch rotation after that, doubled up the guards, but it didn't help us sleep any easier. The third night is when I first saw it. I pulled watch from 0200 to 0400, the worst shift because that's when you're the most tired and the darkness feels the heaviest. I was sitting with my back against a tree, rifle across my lap, trying to stay awake by counting the mosquito bites on my arms. That's when I heard it. Something big moving through the jungle, and it wasn't trying to be quiet. Whatever it was walking through that dense vegetation like it didn't care who heard it coming. My first thought was enemy patrol. My second thought, when I caught sight of it between the trees, was that my mind was playing tricks on me. The silhouette was enormous, at least 9 or 10 feet tall, walking upright on 2 legs. But the shape was wrong for a man. Too broad across the shoulders, too massive. It moved like a person, but bigger than any person I'd ever seen. It stopped about 50 yards from our camp and just stood there, and I swear to God it was studying us, looking at our sleeping positions, our gear, like it was figuring us out. I had my rifle up, finger on the trigger, but I didn't shoot. Didn't even call out. I just froze and watched, trying to understand what I was seeing. My flashlight was hanging on my gear, and I reached for it slow, clicked it on, and swept the beam toward where the thing was standing. For just a second, maybe less, the light caught its eyes. They reflected back red like a dog's eyes or a deer's eyes do in headlights. But these were higher up, way higher, at least 8 feet off the ground. Then it was gone, just melted back into the jungle without making a sound, which seemed impossible for something that size. I sat there the rest of my watch, didn't wake anyone else, didn't report what I'd seen. Figured they'd think I was losing it, or maybe I was losing it. But when the sun came up and I could see again, I went to the spot where it had been standing. There in the mud, clear as day, was a handprint, pressed into the soft ground next to a tree, like it had leaned against the trunk while it watched us. That print was 18 inches long, had 5 fingers, had creases and lines like a human palm, but the size was all wrong. The scale was all wrong. Everything about it was wrong. Over the next few days, the whole squad started noticing things. We'd be moving through the jungle and hear something big pacing us, staying parallel to our route, but off in the thick vegetation. Branches would crack, leaves would rustle, but whenever we stopped to look, there'd be nothing there. Just the sounds moving away, staying ahead of us or behind us, but always there. We were being followed, and we all knew it. The smell hit us sometimes too. You know how a wet dog smells, that strong animal odor? Imagine that mixed with something musky and wild, something that's never been near soap or civilization. It would roll over us when the wind shifted, so strong it made your eyes water. You could taste it in your mouth. And it would come from different directions, like whatever it was had been moving around us, circling our position. We found more footprints, found trees with the bark stripped off in long tiers, way up high where no person could reach. One of the guys swore he saw something massive moving through the canopy above us, using the branches like highways up there in the treetops. Our squad leader kept saying we were paranoid, that it was just the stress getting to us, but I could see the fear in his eyes too. He knew something was out there. We all did. On day 5, we stopped near a stream to refill our canteens. The water was running clear and cold, coming down from higher elevations. While the guys were filtering water, I walked upstream a bit to check the area. That's when I found it, a kind of nest or resting spot made from branches and leaves, built into the crook where a massive tree trunk split into 2. It was at least 12 feet off the ground, woven together in a way that looked deliberate, intentional, not something that had fallen there naturally. Under the tree were more signs, scat, bigger than anything I'd seen from a bear or other animal, piles of what looked like fruit rinds. some kind of jungle fruit we didn't recognize, and bones, small animal bones, picked clean, arranged in a pile. Something lived here, or had lived here recently. Something big enough to sleep 12 feet up in a tree. Something that ate fruit and meat both. I called the squad leader over. He looked at it all, looked up at that nest, and his face went pale. He told me not to touch anything, told me to get back to the group. We filled our canteens fast and moved out, putting distance between us and that spot. But as we left, I looked back, thought I saw movement in the trees, something large shifting position, watching us go. Later that same day, around 1400 hours, we were moving through a section of jungle when the point man suddenly stopped and raised his fist. Everyone froze. He was looking at something ahead and he looked scared. I moved up to see what he'd found. There, in a small clearing, was the Bigfoot, clear as day, in full sunlight filtering through the canopy. It was digging in the ground, using its hands to excavate something. From where we were hiding, maybe 40 yards away, I could see everything. The muscles moving under its dark brown hair. The way its fingers worked, almost human, but bigger, stronger. It pulled something out of the ground, looked like roots or tubers, and ate them right there. Sat down cross-legged like a person would, and just ate its food, completely unaware we were watching. We stayed frozen for almost 10 minutes, just observing it. The way it moved was so human-like, but also completely different. More fluid somehow, more efficient. When it finished eating, it stood up, and that's when we saw how truly massive it was. Had to be 10.5 feet tall, maybe more. Arms that hung down past where humans would stop, reaching almost to its knees. Hands that looked like they could crush a skull without effort. Then it turned its head in our direction. We all stopped breathing. Its eyes scanned the tree line where we were hiding. And for a second, I was sure it saw us. But it didn't react, didn't seem alarmed. Just looked for a moment, then turned and walked away into the jungle. The way it moved was incredible, absolutely silent despite its size, just flowing through the vegetation like water. One second it was there, next second it was gone, melted into the green like it had never existed. The ARVN soldiers started calling it Ngoi Rung. When we asked what that meant, they said it translated to forest person or wild man. They said the old people in the villages had stories about them, about huge creatures that lived deep in the jungle where people didn't go. We'd always figured those were just stories, legends, the kind of stuff every culture has. But now we weren't so sure. Now we were living in one of those stories, and it didn't feel like a legend. It felt real and scary and completely outside what we thought we understood about the world. The tension kept building because we couldn't tell what was the creature and what might be the enemy. Every sound could be either one. Every broken branch could be a threat or could be that thing watching us. We were jumpy, taking longer watches, sleeping less. The mission was already dangerous enough without adding something impossible into the mix. Day 6, everything went to hell. We were moving through a particularly dense section of jungle, visibility down to maybe 10 or 15 feet in any direction. The point man had just signaled for us to hold up when the whole world exploded in gunfire. Enemy ambush, at least 20 or 30 of them from the sound of it, hidden in the vegetation all around us. We went from quiet patrol to absolute chaos in less than a second. Bullets were snapping through the leaves, thudding into trees, kicking up dirt. Everyone dove for cover, trying to find anything solid to get behind. I ended up behind a fallen log that wasn't nearly big enough, trying to make myself as small as possible. 2 of our guys got hit in that first burst of fire. One went down and didn't move again. The other took a round in the leg and started screaming. just screaming and screaming while bullets kept flying, and we tried to figure out where the hell the enemy was shooting from. We tried to establish a defensive position, but we were outnumbered and scattered and in bad terrain. The firefight lasted maybe 20 minutes but felt like hours. The noise was overwhelming, the smell of gunpowder and jungle rot and blood all mixing together. I could hear the wounded man screaming for a medic, could hear our squad leader yelling coordinates into the radio, trying to get support, could hear enemy soldiers shouting to each other in Vietnamese, tightening the noose around us. Then I heard something different, a roar, not a human sound, not a weapon, but a roar that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It was so deep I felt it in my chest, in my bones. The kind of sound that triggers something primal in your brain, something left over from when our ancestors were prey. Every hair on my body stood up, and for a second the gunfire actually slowed down, like everyone had heard it and didn't know what the hell it was. Through the smoke and the vegetation, I saw it. The Bigfoot. Massive, dark brown hair covering its entire body, easily 10 feet tall and built like it could pull trees out of the ground with its bare hands. It was between us and some of the enemy positions, and it looked angry. Not scared, not confused, but genuinely pissed off. The enemy saw it too. I heard their shooting change direction, heard them firing at it instead of at us, heard the panic in their voices as they yelled to each other. The creature roared again, and this time I saw its mouth open. Massive jaws, teeth that looked almost human but bigger, stronger. The sound that came out seemed to vibrate the air itself. Then it charged, not like a man running, but like a force of nature. It covered ground impossibly fast for something that size, crashing through vegetation that would stop a person cold. Branches as thick as my arm just snapped like twigs when it pushed through them. I watched it grab a tree trunk, had to be 8 inches in diameter, and just rip it out of the ground. Roots tore free from the earth with a sound like thunder. The Bigfoot swung that tree like a club, and I heard it connect with something, heard men screaming in Vietnamese, high-pitched terror screams that didn't sound human themselves. The enemy was firing at it now, full automatic, dozens of rounds, and the Bigfoot didn't even slow down. Through gaps in the vegetation, I caught glimpses of it moving through their position, saw it grab one enemy soldier and just toss him. The man flew through the air like a rag doll, must have gone 15 feet before he hit a tree trunk and crumpled. Saw it overturn what looked like a heavy machine gun emplacement, just flipped it like it was made of cardboard. The Americans were still pinned down, but the enemy wasn't shooting at us anymore. They were too busy trying to survive the monster they'd woken up. One enemy soldier ran right past my position, didn't even see me. His face was pure terror, eyes wide, mouth open in a scream. He'd dropped his rifle, dropped everything, just running blind. Behind him, I could see the Bigfoot standing in a small clearing it had created by simply walking through the jungle. It beat its chest with both fists. The sound like drums, like something you'd hear in a movie, but louder and more real than anything I could have imagined. Then it roared again, and the last of the enemy broke. They ran, all of them, just abandoned everything and fled. The Bigfoot stood there for a moment, watching them go, making sure they weren't coming back. I got a good look at it then, maybe 30 yards away. The muscle definition under all that hair, the way its chest heaved from exertion, the intelligence in its eyes as it scanned the area. It looked toward our positions, looked right at where some of us were hiding. For a second, I thought it might charge us too, but then it just turned and walked away, following the enemy soldiers into the deep jungle, making sure they kept running. We Americans just laid there in our positions, too shocked to move. Nobody gave orders, nobody said anything. We just listened to the sound of the enemy running away, listened to something large moving through the jungle after them, listened to our own breathing and our wounded man moaning in pain. The whole firefight had lasted maybe 25 minutes from start to finish, but those last few minutes had been something out of a nightmare. When the shooting finally stopped, the jungle went quiet. That complete silence again, like the forest was holding its breath. Our squad leader was the first one to move, slowly getting up from behind the tree he'd been using for cover. He looked around at all of us, and his face was white, eyes wide. He said to grab the wounded and move out, said it in a voice that was trying to be steady but wasn't quite making it. Nobody mentioned what we'd just seen. Nobody acknowledged it. We just followed orders because that's what you do when your brain is trying to process something it can't handle. We could hear the creature moving away through the jungle, breaking branches as it went, moving in the same direction the enemy had run. We gathered ourselves up, did a quick check for casualties. 1 man dead, 1 wounded badly, bullet through his thigh, bleeding too much. We got a tourniquet on him, got him on his feet with help, and started moving, fast. Didn't matter where, just away from that spot, away from what had happened. We found the area where the enemy had been positioned. There was blood on the leaves, on the ground. More blood than I expected, dark red soaking into the jungle floor. Abandoned weapons, packs dropped in panic, cooking gear still sitting out like they'd been interrupted mid-meal. But there were other things too, things that made my skin crawl. One of the trees at the edge of their position had claw marks gouged into the bark. Deep furrows like someone had dragged their fingers down the trunk with enough force to tear through wood. The marks were 7-8 feet up the tree. No person could have made those marks at that height, and no person had fingers strong enough to dig into hardwood like that. There was an enemy rifle, an AK-47, that had been bent, not just dropped or damaged from being shot. Bent. The barrel was curved at an angle that shouldn't be possible without heavy machinery. Something had grabbed that rifle and twisted it like it was made of wire. We passed it around, looking at it in disbelief. The metal was still warm to the touch. And footprints, those massive footprints pressed into the soft jungle floor, clear 5-toe pattern, humanoid shape but wrong size, completely wrong size. We measured one against a guy's boot. The print was more than twice as long, more than twice as wide. The depth of the impression suggested something that weighed at least 500-600 pounds. Maybe more. There was a piece of torn fabric caught on branches about 11 feet up, looked like it came from one of the enemy uniforms. Dark green material, ripped, not cut, with what looked like blood on it. Like something had grabbed a soldier and lifted him right off the ground, and his uniform had caught on the branch as he was carried past. We didn't find the soldier, didn't want to think too hard about what might have happened to him. One of our guys found something else. Drag marks leading away from the position, heading deeper into the jungle. Multiple sets of drag marks, like bodies had been pulled away. The marks were accompanied by those huge footprints, and the trail of disturbed vegetation led off in the direction the enemy had fled. The Bigfoot had chased them, had hunted them down. We didn't follow the trail, didn't want to see what was at the end of it. We didn't stick around to investigate. Got our wounded man between 2 guys and set a pace that was too fast for the jungle, but we didn't care. We needed distance. Needed to put space between us and whatever the hell had just happened. That night we set up a coal camp, no fires, ate our rations cold, and tried to sleep. The wounded man had a fever already, infection setting in despite the antibiotics we'd given him. He kept mumbling about demons, about giant demons in the jungle. But it wasn't just him talking. After the ambush, after what we'd all seen, the silence was broken. Guys started sharing things they'd been keeping to themselves. One guy said he'd seen eyes watching him from the darkness 2 nights before. Eyes that were too high up to be human, reflecting his flashlight beam red like an animal's. Another said he'd heard something breathing heavy outside our perimeter on day 4, breath so deep and loud it sounded like a machine running. The squad leader finally admitted he'd found a tuft of hair caught on a thorn bush on day 3. Said he'd kept it in his pocket, didn't tell anyone because it didn't make sense. He pulled it out now, showed us. The hair was coarse, dark brown, each strand as thick as wire. Way thicker than human hair, thicker than anything from an ape or monkey. We passed it around in the dim light, nobody saying what we were all thinking. Everyone touched it, felt how strange it was, how real. One of the younger guys, couldn't have been more than 19, started crying. Said he'd been so scared for days, thought he was losing his mind. Said he'd seen the creature watching our camp multiple times, had convinced himself it was hallucinations from stress. Now he knew it was real. And somehow that was more terrifying than thinking he'd gone crazy. The squad leader told him to get it together, but his voice wasn't harsh. We were all feeling the same thing. Terror and confusion and the complete breakdown of everything we thought we understood about the world. The rest of us didn't say anything after that, just took our watch shifts and stared into the darkness, listening to the jungle and wondering what else was out there that we didn't know about. The next 3 days were a different kind of hell. We kept moving toward our extraction point, but the wounded man was slowing us down. His leg was getting worse, infection spreading despite everything we tried. He needed a hospital, needed real medical care, and we were still days away from extraction. But we became aware, all of us, that we weren't alone. The Bigfoot was following us. We'd see it sometimes through the trees, just standing there watching us. Never coming close, never threatening, just observing. At night, we'd hear it moving around our perimeter, heavy footfalls circling our camp like it was standing guard. But I got to see more than that on my watch. Around midnight on day 8, I was sitting there trying to stay alert when I heard it approaching. Not from one direction, but circling, moving all the way around our camp. I could track it by sound, hear it stop every 20 yards or so. At one point, it came close enough that I could smell it. That thick, musky odor that made my eyes water. The moon was bright that night, and when it passed through a gap in the canopy, I saw it clearly. It was checking our perimeter, actually patrolling like a soldier would. Stopping to look outward into the jungle, listening, then moving to the next position. It was guarding us, protecting us from whatever else was out there. I watched it for almost an hour, just circling our camp over and over, never coming in but never leaving us unprotected. Then, around 0200 hours, it stopped moving. Just froze in place about 50 yards out. I couldn't see it anymore, but I could sense it, could feel it standing there focused on something. The jungle had gone completely silent. Even the insects stopped their noise. Something was wrong. I gripped my rifle tighter, clicked the safety off as quietly as I could. That's when the trip flare went off on the opposite side of camp from where the Bigfoot was standing. Everyone scrambled up, weapons ready, expecting enemy attack. The flare lit up the jungle in harsh white light. And there it was, the Bigfoot standing in the open, looking toward us. But it wasn't looking at us, it was looking past us, toward something beyond our position. And beyond it, barely visible in the dying light of the flare, shapes of men retreating into the darkness, enemy scouts running away. The Bigfoot had stopped them from sneaking up on us, probably saved our lives without us even knowing we were in danger until that flare went off. In the morning, we found the evidence. Enemy footprints approaching our camp from the east, coming in careful and quiet like they were planning to hit us in our sleep. Then those footprints turned into running tracks, sprinting away, and over the top of them, those massive Bigfoot prints, like the creature had intercepted them, stopped them from reaching us. It was protecting us. This impossible thing from the deep jungle was keeping us alive. We started to understand then, though nobody said it out loud. Whatever it was, it had decided we were under its protection. Maybe it saw us as the lesser evil compared to the other soldiers. Maybe it understood we were just trying to get out of its forest. Maybe it felt something like pity for us. I don't know, but it stayed close, and whenever enemy patrols got near us, we'd hear that roar in the distance, and the enemy would scatter. Day 9, we had another brief contact with an enemy patrol. Just a quick exchange of fire, maybe 30 seconds. We broke contact and ran, standard drill. But one of our guys tripped over a root, went down hard, landed wrong, and we heard the snap of his ankle breaking. Hit his head on a rock too, got knocked silly. Now we had 2 wounded men, one with a bad leg infection and one with a broken ankle and a possible concussion. 2 guys who couldn't walk on their own, and our extraction point was still 2 days away at the pace we'd been keeping. We tried to rig a stretcher from ponchos and branches, but moving 2 wounded men through that jungle was nearly impossible. Couldn't carry them both. Could barely manage one. Our squad leader spent an hour trying to figure out our options, and none of them were good. The wounded were getting worse. One was delirious with fever. The other kept drifting in and out, probably concussed. We needed help, needed it fast, but we were too far from any fire base for a quick extraction. That evening, we set up camp early, tried to make the wounded men comfortable, which was impossible in the jungle. Gave them water, checked their wounds, rationed out antibiotics we didn't have enough of. The guy with the infected leg wasn't going to make it much longer without surgery. We all knew it, but nobody wanted to say it. His fever was climbing, and he was starting to talk to people who weren't there. After dark, I pulled watch again. Seemed like I always got the night shift. I was sitting there, listening to the jungle and the labored breathing of the wounded men, when I heard something approaching, not trying to sneak, just walking through the forest like it owned the place. I brought my rifle up, clicked off the safety, and waited. The Bigfoot walked right to the edge of our camp, stopped maybe 20 feet away, standing in a patch of moonlight that made it through the canopy. This was the clearest look I'd gotten at it since that first night. It was enormous, at least 10 feet tall, shoulders broader than any man's, covered head to foot in dark brown hair that looked almost black in the moonlight. The face was human-like, but not human. Heavy brow ridge, flat nose, eyes that caught the light and reflected it back. But those eyes were intelligent. You could see it thinking, see it examining the situation. It looked at the 2 wounded men lying there on the ground, looked at them for a long moment, then it looked at me. Straight at me, eye contact, and I couldn't look away. It made a sound. Low rumbling deep in its chest, not aggressive, not threatening, almost like it was asking a question, though I couldn't tell you what question. I just stayed still, rifle still pointing at it, but my finger off the trigger. We looked at each other across that small space, human and something not human, and I felt like we understood each other somehow. It was concerned about the wounded men, worried about them. After what felt like an hour but was probably only a minute, the Bigfoot backed away into the jungle, didn't turn around, just stepped backward into the shadows and was gone. I sat there the rest of the night thinking about those eyes, about the intelligence I'd seen there, about what it meant that this thing was still with us, still watching over us. Morning of day 10, our squad leader made a decision. We needed to split up. The faster guys would push ahead to the extraction point, try to get help sent back for the wounded. Me and 2 other guys would stay behind with the wounded men, set up a defensive position, and wait. It was risky as hell. Small group like ours was vulnerable, but we were out of options and the wounded couldn't wait anymore. The fast group moved out at first light, 6 men moving quick, carrying minimal gear. They'd make the extraction point by tomorrow if they pushed hard. We watched them disappear into the jungle, and then it was just the four of us. 3 able-bodied guys and 2 who were in bad shape. We found a decent spot, good sight lines, natural cover, set up our claymores, established sectors of fire, did everything by the book. Then we settled in to wait and hoped the enemy didn't find us before help arrived. One of the wounded men was mostly unconscious by afternoon. The infection had spread through his system and his fever was so high he was barely responsive. The other guy was in and out, confused from the head injury, kept asking where he was and why his ankle hurt so bad. We did what we could, which wasn't much. Gave them water, tried to keep them comfortable, waited. That afternoon, we heard something coming through the jungle. Not being subtle about it, just crashing through the vegetation. All 3 of us grabbed our weapons, took positions behind cover, aimed at where the sound was coming from. My heart was pounding, expecting enemy patrol, expecting a fight we probably couldn't win. But it wasn't the enemy. The Bigfoot emerged from the tree line about 40 yards away, stopped when it saw our weapons pointed at it. Just stood there, hands at its sides, looking at us. One of the other guys started to squeeze his trigger. I yelled at him to wait. Don't shoot. Don't ask me why I did that. Instinct maybe, or maybe I understood on some level that this thing wasn't our enemy. The Bigfoot slowly sat down. Right there in the open, it lowered itself to the ground in a non-threatening posture. Like a dog sitting to show it means no harm. We kept our weapons on it, but we didn't fire. We just watched each other across that distance. Minutes passed. 5 minutes, 10, just 3 scared Americans and a creature that shouldn't exist, waiting to see what would happen next. Then the Bigfoot stood up, moved slowly, carefully toward our position, every step deliberate, like it was being cautious not to spook us. My heart was hammering in my chest, but I kept my finger off the trigger. Something told me to wait, to see what it was doing. It walked right into our little defensive position, and we let it. 3 guys with loaded rifles just watched it come closer, and we didn't shoot. The creature knelt down next to the unconscious wounded man, the one with the bad infection, the one who probably wouldn't last another night. It looked at him, then looked at me, then looked back at the wounded man. Gently, more gently than seemed possible for something that big and powerful, it slid its hands under the soldier and lifted him up. Cradled him in its arms like he weighed nothing, like he was a child. The other 2 soldiers raised their weapons. I told them to hold. Don't shoot, just wait. The Bigfoot stood there holding our wounded friend, looking at me again with those intelligent eyes. It made that rumbling sound again, and I realized it was communicating, telling me something, asking permission maybe, or telling me to trust it. I nodded, didn't know what else to do, just nodded at this impossible creature holding my dying friend. The Bigfoot turned and started walking away, heading in the direction of our extraction point, and we followed, grabbed the other wounded man, got him up between 2 of us, and followed a Bigfoot through the jungle. If someone had told me a month earlier that I'd do something like that, I'd have said they were insane. But there we were, trusting our lives and our friend's life to something we didn't understand. That creature moved through the jungle like it was strolling through a park. Fast, but not running. It knew paths we'd never have found, routes through the terrain that made the walking easier. It would get ahead of us, then stop and wait, letting us catch up. Never seemed impatient, never seemed bothered by the weight of the man it was carrying. Just kept moving, kept glancing back to make sure we were still following. Hours passed. The sun was getting low, filtering through the canopy in those golden beams that made the jungle look almost beautiful. Our other wounded man kept asking what was happening, where we were going. we didn't have answers to give him. Didn't know how to explain that a Bigfoot was leading us to safety. It sounded crazy even thinking it. At one point, the Bigfoot stopped and gently set our friend down in a clear spot. We thought maybe it was leaving, maybe it was done helping. But it just walked off into the jungle and came back 5 minutes later. In its hands were large leaves, the kind that catch rainwater in their curves. The leaves were full of clean water. It offered them to us. We drank. Then it produced some kind of plant, something I'd never seen before. It crushed the plant between its massive hands, squeezing out a paste. It knelt beside our wounded friend and put that paste on his infected wound. We just watched. What else could we do? About an hour later, we came to a spot where the jungle was thick with vines and fallen trees. Looked impassable. Would have taken us an hour to hack through or find a way around. The Bigfoot stopped, looked at the obstacle, then simply grabbed a fallen tree trunk that had to weigh 500 pounds. It lifted that tree like it was made of balsa wood, tossed it aside into the underbrush. Then it started pulling vines down, ripping them free from the canopy above, clearing a path for us like it was trimming a garden. We walked through the opening it made, still carrying our other wounded man, and the Bigfoot picked up our friend and kept moving. The thing that struck me was how gentle it was with our wounded man despite its obvious strength. Every time it stepped over a log or ducked under a branch, it moved with care, protected his head with one massive hand, made sure not to jostle him too much. This creature that could rip trees out of the ground and throw grown men through the air was handling our friend like he was made of glass. Later, when the sun was getting low, we heard something else in the jungle. Movement off to our left, maybe 100 yards out. The Bigfoot heard it too, stopped dead, head turning toward the sound. It made a low rumbling noise, different from the questioning sound it had made before. This one was a warning, a threat. Whatever was out there, the Bigfoot didn't want it near us. It set our wounded man down, gestured for us to stay put. Then it moved toward the sound, and I swear it seemed to grow larger as it went. Shoulders getting broader, head held higher, making itself as big and intimidating as possible. We heard it crash into the underbrush, heard that roar again, heard something else running away. When it came back 2 minutes later, it had blood on its knuckles. Not its own blood. Whatever had been out there, the Bigfoot had made sure it wouldn't bother us. After that, it picked him up again and kept moving. We followed, carrying our other wounded man, completely beyond our understanding of what was real and what wasn't. This was happening. This was real. We were walking through the jungle, following a creature from legend, and somehow it felt right. It felt like the only possible way we were going to survive. We walked until it was almost dark. Must have covered 8 or 9 miles, which was insane considering the terrain and the fact that the Bigfoot was carrying a full-grown man. The jungle started to open up, the canopy getting thinner. And then we saw it. The valley, our extraction point. We'd made it. The Bigfoot carried our friend to the edge of the clearing and laid him down in the soft grass. So gentle, so careful. It arranged him in a comfortable position, made sure his head was supported. Then it stood up and looked at all 3 of us. At me, at the 2 other guys, at the wounded man who was conscious enough to stare up at it with wide, confused eyes. I felt like it was saying goodbye. Like it was making sure we understood that we were safe now, that we'd made it, that we could take it from here. I nodded again, felt like I should say something but didn't know what. Thank you seemed insufficient for saving our lives, for carrying our dying friend miles through hostile jungle, for protecting us from the enemy, for doing something I still didn't understand. The Bigfoot turned and walked back toward the tree line, back toward the deep jungle where it lived. The last thing I saw was its silhouette disappearing into the trees as darkness fell. Just a massive shape blending into shadow. And then it was gone, like it had never been there at all. An hour later, the rest of our squad showed up with a medic from the fire base. They'd pushed hard, made good time, and managed to get a medic to come back with them. The medic immediately went to work on our wounded men, starting IVs, checking vitals, administering real antibiotics. Our squad leader asked how the hell we'd made it to the extraction point so fast. We'd been at least a day's hard march away when they'd left us. We looked at each other, me and the two guys who'd seen everything. What could we say? We told the squad leader we'd had help, that we'd gotten lucky with the terrain, found an easy route. The squad leader looked skeptical but didn't push it. He had other things to worry about. The helicopter extraction came at first light. Big Huey dropping into the clearing, rotors beating the air, making enough noise to wake the dead. The door gunner was scanning the tree line, weapon ready, expecting trouble. We loaded the wounded men first, got them strapped in. The medic was already working on them, hanging more IVs, keeping them stable. They were both unconscious now, the fever and the concussion taking them under, but their vitals were holding. They were going to make it. As we were getting ready to board, the squad leader grabbed my arm. He was looking past me toward the jungle, and his face had gone pale. I turned to look. There, standing in the shadows at the edge of the tree line, was the Bigfoot. In the bright morning light, with the helicopter's rotors kicking up wind and noise, it just stood there watching us leave. Completely still, like a statue, like it was making sure we got out safe. Other guys saw it too. I heard someone curse under his breath, heard another guy say something that might have been a prayer. The crew chief on the helicopter was yelling at us to board, to move our asses, but we all took a moment. Just stood there looking at the creature that had saved our lives, that had protected us through the worst days of our tour, that had carried our dying friend to safety. I raised my hand. Just a small gesture, a wave of thanks. The Bigfoot's head tilted slightly, and I swear I saw it nod. Just a slight forward motion of its massive head, acknowledgement passing between us across that clearing. Then it took one step back, and the jungle seemed to swallow it. The morning light and the shadows and the vegetation just absorbed it, and it was gone, like it had never been there at all. We climbed into the helicopter. As we lifted off, I looked down at the clearing getting smaller beneath us, looked at the jungle spreading out in all directions, endless green canopy hiding everything underneath. Wondered how many of those creatures were down there, living their lives, avoiding humans, staying hidden in the deep places where we don't go. Wondered if anyone would ever believe what we'd seen. On the flight back, the wounded man who'd been carried started to regain consciousness. The IVs and the real medicine were working, bringing him back from the edge. He was groggy, confused, looking around at the helicopter with unfocused eyes. Then he looked at me, and his eyes cleared for just a second. He asked about the big man who'd carried him. Said he remembered being held, remembered feeling safe despite everything. Said he remembered arms like tree trunks holding him gentle as a baby. Said he remembered looking up and seeing a face that wasn't human but wasn't animal either. I told him he'd been hallucinating from the fever, told him it was just the sickness playing tricks on his mind, told him we'd carried him to extraction, that he'd been delirious the whole time. He looked at me for a long moment, and I could see in his eyes that he knew I was lying, but he was too weak to argue, too sick to push it. He just closed his eyes and said, "Okay," said maybe I was right. Then he drifted off again, back into unconsciousness. But I saw a tear run down his face before he went under. He knew, deep down, he knew the truth. Back at the fire base, we went through debriefing, sat in a tent with an officer who asked questions and wrote down our answers. Wanted to know about the enemy contact, about our casualties, about how we'd evaded pursuit. The official report ended up saying we'd encountered enemy forces, taken casualties, evaded and escaped, reached the extraction point, all true, just incomplete. But that wasn't the end of it. The next day, me and the two other guys who'd seen everything got pulled into a different tent. This time, there were two officers we'd never seen before, wearing insignia that suggested they were from intelligence. They asked us to go through the whole mission again, start to finish. So we did, and this time we told them everything about the Bigfoot, about how it had saved us during the ambush, about how it had carried our wounded friend to extraction. They didn't laugh, didn't tell us we were crazy. They just sat there taking notes, asking specific questions. How tall was it? What color was the hair? Did it make vocalizations? How did it move? They wanted details, lots of details. One of them asked if we'd seen any other creatures like it, asked if the ARVN soldiers had said anything about them. We told them about the Ngoy Rung, about the local legends. When we finished, they looked at each other for a long moment. Then the senior officer said what we'd experienced was classified, said we weren't to discuss it with anyone, not the other men in our unit, not our families when we got home, not anyone. Said it was a matter of operational security. We asked why, and he said that stories like this could damage morale, could make soldiers afraid of the jungle in ways that would get them killed, could cause panic. I asked him if they knew about these creatures, if there had been other reports. He didn't answer directly, just said that unexplained phenomena occurred in combat zones sometimes, and that it was their job to manage that information appropriately. Said we'd done our duty by reporting it, and now our duty was to keep quiet about it. Said if we talked, we could face charges for spreading disinformation or causing disruption to military operations. One of the other guys asked about our wounded friend who'd been carried, asked if he was going to be told to keep quiet too. The officer said that soldier had no memory of the incident due to his fever and infection. Said his medical records would show he'd been delirious, that anything he remembered would be attributed to fever dreams. They'd already taken care of it. Before we left, the officer told us one more thing. Said we weren't the first patrol to report something like this. Said there had been other incidents, other sightings, scattered reports from different parts of the country. But the military position was that these reports were unreliable, products of stress and combat fatigue and the psychological pressure of jungle warfare. Said acknowledging the existence of unknown creatures in the jungle would create more problems than it solved. Better for everyone if these stories stayed buried. We signed documents, non-disclosure agreements they called them. Didn't have much choice. We were just enlisted men, and these were officers telling us this was an order. So we signed, and we walked out of that tent, knowing that the truth of what had saved our lives would never be officially acknowledged. The Bigfoot that had protected us, that had carried our dying friend to safety, would be erased from the record, turned into a classified footnote that nobody would ever read. That night, me and the two other guys who'd witnessed everything met up quietly behind the supply depot. Didn't plan it, just ended up there at the same time, like we were drawn together by shared experience. We stood there smoking cigarettes, not talking at first. Finally, one of them said maybe we shouldn't mention what we'd seen, said nobody would believe us anyway, said we'd end up in psychiatric evaluation, probably get sent home on a Section 8 discharge. The other guy said maybe it was heat exhaustion, maybe we'd all hallucinated the same thing, maybe the stress and the fear had made us see something that wasn't there. But I still had it. The piece of plant material the Bigfoot had used on our friend's wound. I'd picked it up, kept it in my pocket. It was real. It was physical evidence. We'd all seen the same thing, felt the same presence. We made a pact right there. We wouldn't tell anyone. We'd keep it between ourselves. Who would believe us anyway? Over the following weeks, both wounded men survived, made full recoveries, got sent home eventually. One of them had no memory of the creature, no memory of being carried. The fever had burned that part out of his brain, or maybe his mind just couldn't accept it and deleted it. The other one sometimes mentioned dreams about being carried by a big soldier, dreams about feeling safe in giant arms. But he talked about them like dreams, not memories. Maybe that's how his brain dealt with it. Our squad finished our tour. All of us who'd survived went home to different parts of the country, went back to our lives, tried to forget the jungle and the fear and the friends we'd lost. I came home, got a job, met a woman, got married, had kids, built a normal, quiet life. Never told my wife what had happened out there. Never told my children as they grew up. Sometimes I'd see articles in the newspaper about Bigfoot sightings. People would laugh, make jokes, talk about crazy people seeing things. I never laughed, just read the articles quietly and wondered. Over the years, I kept in touch with the 2 other soldiers who'd seen it. We'd call each other sometimes on holidays or birthdays. We'd talk about normal things, families and jobs and getting older. But there was always a subtext, an understanding between us. One of them died in a car accident back in the 80s. He took the secret to his grave. The other one developed dementia in the early 2000s, ended up in a nursing home. Near the end, he'd sometimes talk about the big soldier who saved us. The nursing home staff thought it was confused war memories. I'd visit and hold his hand and let him talk because I knew the truth. When he died a few years back, I was the last one left who fully remembered. I'm in my 70s now, don't have a lot of years left myself, probably. After my wife passed 2 years ago, I started thinking more about the Bigfoot, about whether the story should die with me. My kids are grown now, have families of their own. What's the military going to do if I talk, take away my pension? I've already lived my life. I've decided to tell this story simply, exactly as it happened. I'm not asking anyone to believe it, just putting the truth out there. That thing in the jungle was real, it was intelligent, and it chose to help us when it could have let us die. I've spent 56 years wondering why. Maybe it saw we were just young men, scared and far from home. Maybe it understood suffering. Maybe it was just a moment of compassion between 2 different kinds of beings. I'll never know the answer, but I'm grateful. The Bigfoot gave me these years when it carried my friend to safety, when it kept the enemy away from us. The least I can do is tell the truth about it now. I'm still sitting here with my dog tags, but I feel lighter now. Dawn is starting to break outside my kitchen window. However many days I have left, I'm okay with that. The Bigfoot gave me this life, and I didn't waste it. And somewhere, maybe still in those jungles, or maybe somewhere else where the wild places haven't been completely tamed, I hope that creature is still out there. Hope it found peace. Hope it stayed safe and hidden and free. It gave me my life back that day in 1968. This story is the only way I know to say thank you. For more interesting stories, check this out.